So firstly, good afternoon to all the distinguished members on this panel, and a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this discussion. At the end of the day, I hope that this proves to be a fruitful and engaging forum where interesting leadership perspectives and lessons are exchanged, not just within the panel, but like I said before, our intent is also to kind of publish this for the interests of a wider audience who would definitely like to listen to what all you have to say today. I don't think I necessarily need to do it, but as a matter of protocol, I'll just make a quick introduction to everyone who's on the panel here. So we have Sandeep Singh, Managing Director of Tata Hitachi Construction Machinery, Sriram Kannan, Managing Director of Class India, Dimitrov Krishnan from Volvo Construction Equipment, Parag Satpute from Bridgestone, Ramashankar Pandey from Hela India Lighting, N.P. Thimaiya from Meritor, Ashwini Keswani, Executive Director, Asia Pacific from Motica Group, and we were also expecting Srihari Mulgun from Ricardo. Hopefully he'll also join in. Very quick introduction to our firm, and I'll set out the context for this e-panel discussion. Our firm, DEININGER Consulting, is an international executive search and leadership consulting firm headquartered in Frankfurt, Germany. We've been in the search and talent advisory business for the last 40-odd years, and our international presence spans most of the major global markets, internationally. In India, we've been active for the last 12 years, and we've had the privilege of working with some very esteemed clients across a range of sectors that cut across automotive, industrial, infrastructure, retail, consumer, technology, and banking and financial services. As a global search and leadership consulting firm, it wouldn't be wrong to say that our world revolves around the subject of leadership. And often it is tough times such as the present one that we are all witnessing, which proved to be a real test for leaders. The COVID-19 cases, as we all know, continue to mount globally and have already crossed the 3 million mark. Many say that the worst is yet to come before the situation settles down. Hopefully not. But while human life and health are inevitably the worst impacted, COVID-19 has also led to severe business disruptions, sending global economies down, into a downward spiral. These are unprecedented, extraordinary circumstances, and frankly, it is the unpredictability which makes the scenario more unsettling. And in such times, we felt that we had an interesting role to play in creating a platform for industry leaders to come together and share perspectives about how they are combating the impact of COVID-19 on their organizations. There are two key questions here today before the panel, which we would like to discuss and address. First is, how are CEOs of automotive organizations addressing the business challenges posed by COVID-19? And secondly, what are the likely trends emerging which will pave the way for a new world order for businesses and corporates? And how are businesses and leaders preparing for the new normal post-COVID-19? With that, I'd like to kickstart the discussion and probably begin by asking the panel to share their perspectives on how they are looking to combat the manufacturing and supply chain disruptions that the industry is witnessing today, and that too coupled with the impact on demand and uncertain recovery time. Sandeep, would you like to go first?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, Manish, for organizing this meeting today on virtual platform.
My pleasure.
I'm sure we will be able to throw good light on the challenges which we are going to face. Though you mentioned in your introductory remark that it is a lot of uncertainty, unpredictability in the market. So I think we are all living with that. It is very, very difficult to, forecast or pinpoint that how we are going to manage our business in the coming future. But then we are all grappling with that and having discussions both internally and externally with our stakeholders. I think the challenge what we have is the customer demand and the customer way of buying is going to undergo change, right? That is one, that there's going to be a shrink in the market. I'm not talking about overall industry. I'm not talking about the construction equipment industry per se. So there's going to be a drop in the demand, at least in the immediate future. and there's going to be a pressure on OEMs and supply chain. And the pressure is something which we have never seen in our life earlier. So there's going to be huge pressure on our cash flows, on our fixed costs. So that is what we are discussing nowadays internally. That how do we manage our immediate problem with regard to the financial health of the company. The second is that how we are going to run a business in future. So I will not talk much on the financial part of the business. That's not what we are looking at today. We all have to look at our internal challenges and then need to manage it. But in terms of market, what I have seen when I was in automobile industry or today in construction equipment industry, many times we ask our supplier to set up their unit around our plant so that we can get regular supply. And many times we do ask them to be dedicated supplier to us, which is not the norm in automobile industry to a large extent. But then there are suppliers who are setting up exclusive unit around your plant just to supply it to you. That's happening in every industry. So that is going to be a big challenge going forward, because the supplier, who is a very important part of our business, he's going to ask us also, what am I going to do in this kind of scenario where I have dedicated my plant to you? And is there any kind of understanding between us where you can where I can take some kind of responsibility from your side to save me in the times like this? That is going to be one challenge which we are going to face. Right. Number two, we used to give them a requirement. Generally, the norm is 1 month firm, and the next 2 months is tentative. And what has been happening in the last 1 year, that norm, though we have tried to follow, but then we have not been able to do that because the demand has been very fluctuating, and sometimes we had to suddenly drop a requirement. That has become another challenge. No doubt it's a challenge on us, but on the suppliers. So therefore, we need to address these two major aspects of supply chain, and that too from a supplier who plays very important part of our business, both in terms of meeting a requirement and quality of our product. So that's what my comments are. So that's what we should discuss, in fact, in today's meeting, that what are our views on that.
You're on mute, Manish.
DK, would you have views on what Sandeep just mentioned? What are your thoughts? What are the current scenario that you see unfolding for a business like yours?
We are in the let's say in the middle or the early part of the crisis. Still haven't passed the peak of this crisis, in my opinion, because we are still in the stage where we are understanding the depth and the width of this crisis. So I think in a crisis situation, timing of decision making is very crucial, and you cannot take decisions too early or too late. You have to be very well informed and fact based in the way you take a call, and not assume things. So in this particular crisis, as has been mentioned by Sandeep, what started off as a supply crisis in let's say in late January, early February, when China was shutting down, Korea was starting to have its challenges, turned into a real crisis within every country wherever we are operating in the world. And today it's not just a health crisis, it's a social crisis, it's a humanitarian crisis, it's a business crisis. And then we are dealing with it. Lockdowns are here, things that never we saw in the world. Even in wartime, you don't see these kind of closures, right? The whole country shuts down. You don't see these kind of things. And this is unprecedented in its state. So in that environment, we are there today, and the opening up of the social system around the world will be gradual. As they say, there is this word being used which we never knew. I never knew there existed a word called lockdown, or what is this called, graded exit. Media is creating terminologies to describe what it will be. But it will, what we call it, a very gradual ramp up will happen.
Right.
What is the pace of that ramp up is not well known. Very difficult to predict the future. The ability of governments to, I mean, while governments might have the ability to do it, whether they show the willpower and the tenacity to execute all the key actions that is required to kickstart the economic activity and still manage the disease spread. These are things that is still very much unknown. And what will be the new mentioned, the new normal, but what will be the new normal is not known. So I think we got to be prepared with multiple scenarios in our arsenal in order to deal with the situation, and try to make sure that in the ecosystem where we exist, everybody is in sync. You know, Sandeep and me are both part of ICMA, which is the Construction Equipment Manufacturers Association, and we are talking to the government about various aspects that they need to understand in order to deal with this situation. It may or may not be linked to COVID, but things that have got disrupted completely, and how do we actually manage? So we do have meetings with the Ministry of Road when it comes to the emission norms and the regulations that are coming into force, why that needs to be changed, and things like that. So I think it's a time when communication is critical, understanding all the elements at play and dealing with it, and being ready for any let's say unforeseen situation. Nothing should surprise us in these times. Yeah, that's what I would stop. Yeah.
Okay. NP, Parag, any views from your perspective of how you're seeing the situation unfold, evolve for businesses like yours?
No, I think my view is, I think I have to add into what DK and Sandeep ji has told. Manufacturing per se, we are not actually fond of work from home culture, right? This is my personal view, right? We're not fond of work from home culture, and we believe that work from home is like non-productive and people are not effective and they really don't work, etc. I think that one misconception, according to me, wherever possible, is eliminated, because we are forced to work from home, a lot of our people, and I see that we are becoming more and more effective in terms of getting the things done. There are, even in the manufacturing setup, a lot of work, you're directly linked into the manufacturing activity, and a lot of work you could do offline. We sit in office and do it. But I think this is one big change, according to me. Whatever the COVID related situation, I think you are already told, I don't touch upon on that. But I think this is one big change, at least personally, I see the manufacturing industry going to adapt into. I think we will start looking seriously the work from home culture and the concept in the manufacturing industry wherever it is possible, because I see it's becoming more and more effective. And we really don't miss. I was just telling one of my other colleague that I'm actually working from home means I'm more busy than otherwise I would have gone to the office. More calls, more meetings, more reviews. I don't really, other than the commute and going and meeting people, I don't really miss anything which is not happening. And the same thing that I see that all my people who are working from home, they're becoming very effective. All the whatever it is need to be done is all getting done. I don't see that. And one more big change also I've seen personally is, we have our engineering back office in Bangalore, and we always used to, even though it's an engineering back office, we used to work from office, and now 100% of that is working from home. And we have a tool to measure the productivity of these people. And surprisingly, 1 week after we started work from home for those hardcore engineering people, the tracker said that the productivity is 10% more than otherwise what they used to do it from office, which was really an eye opener for me at least, and very, very surprising. It was, if the productivity got improved, maybe it was the initial phase, people were over enthusiastic, did more and didn't got up out of their seat, etc. I don't know, but we are seeing that at least last 2 weeks, I'm seeing that the productivity of the engineering community is higher than otherwise what they used to do it in office. So I think that's one big, at least learning from my perspective. And now I feel that my conception is little getting changed. So why not allow these kind of work to work from home even after things getting normal. I think that's one thing which would probably shift from the manufacturing industry perspective. I'm talking about, you know, a lot of
Yeah.
IT, yes, they are all doing it. The second thing is Mr. Sandeep Singh touched upon that is, you know, now today we are started bifurcating essential and non-essential, and it becomes so distinguished, right? Otherwise, for us, everything is essential. You know, you want something, you just go and order it or go and buy it. So now it is the distinction between essential and non-essential is becoming very, very prominent. And it's very interesting to see, you know, whether the people will really go back and start spending money on the non-essential ones like the way we used to do, which is a big to see kind of a thing, because if that behavior changes, I think the whole economy is going to change. Because if you really see the economy wise, the non-essential contributes probably 90% of the economy, right? Maybe just the 10% is the essential. So if the buying pattern changes and people start thinking about, you know, it's a non-essential, do I really need it or I don't need it? And if that happens, then the overall economy is going to significantly change. I think these are the couple of, you know, my perspective that what could change in this new scenario would emerge for people like us.
Right. Thanks.
Also, I'll just add to this. Thanks, Manish. I do agree with Sandeep ji and what Mr. Krishnan explained regarding the uncertainty. You know, we are still in the mid of it, and we don't know where it will end. But at the same time, I think there are a lot of things which, in last few weeks, what worse we imagine. I think there is a kind of you know, optimism. And there's a kind of you know, understanding that yes, no, we are strong enough to see through it. As long as the collective wisdom of all of us and globally, because it's a global pandemic, it's faster than the wider spread, we are fine, and we will be able to learn and respond to that situation. And that's why the time, you know, the turnaround time is very critical at this point of time. All our systems, you know, what Mr. Krishnan also spoke about, the ecosystem. And that's why I think the time is as much we can collaborate, other than our operational difficulties. And I agree with NP regarding our work from home, the understanding the manufacturing industry is very different. You know, we being one of the top 25 manufacturing organizations, great place to work, we have seen working from home. And if you can really mix life and work together, productivity improves. And we have seen that in past. But if you leave the operational part of it, on the overall management of the current situation, I believe there are a lot of things which we can still do under this foggy situation, rather than now focusing on what we are not allowed to do due to the, you know, uncertainties. A lot of things, and one of that is, can we all improve our turnaround time? Can we all improve our business models? And since all the OEMs are here, first of all, thanks a lot. The way we do business together, like a parent and a child, with the OEM and the component industry. There are various business models between us. You know, they can be built to print, where we get all the design and everything done from the OEM side. There are others where we develop our own technology. And if you look at today, as far as Hella India Lighting is concerned, our all engineering and D&D activities have not stopped, because working from home, we have good connectivity, and that is on a very good high. None of our project is delayed, which is going to come in another one, or all the D&D activities are being managed well. But wherever we have the relationship with OEMs, where there's a very special need from the OEMs, like Mr. Sandeep Singh said about the clustered approach, the moment you get into a specific investment, you need certain time zone, which is certain time zone. And it's clear that our time is going to be not like a start-stop, but very fuzzy. The fuzzy situation is there. You can start the factory. You know, we have just got permission for 47 people to be in the plant now. From today, we are starting production. Because ITL has started and we have to start supplying to them, being agro industry. But we are worried about, will the old world will be there, like everything certain, demand comes, forecasting comes, 2 months fixed and 15 days, you know, rolling. I think those things are not going to happen. So probably we have to prepare ourselves with a new world where our models are going to change. For example, if I have a component which I design, develop in a way that I have a standard part, and I put certain, you know, customization, hardly, you know, 10-20% customization, and every OEMs get a very different product. I will prefer that in these scenarios, which is called mass customization. So I have a mass production. At the same time, I'm also customizing. The cost comes down, and OEMs can have choose those products for it's like a commodity, but customized to them. So what happens? The risk comes down, investment comes down, collective investment comes down. There are a lot of things we have to do from the industry side also. If you look at, we are segmented between SIAM, Tractor Association, Construction Association. Now you have the EV Association. You have ACMA, SIAM separately. If you look at in Germany, for example, in my our parent organization, HELA case, is VDA. VDA has all of this together, maybe, and then we have the VDMA, which is from the mining and construction. I think world has to think about it now. How can we bring things together in a business model which has less turnaround time, as lean as possible, and of course our own working as managers, as indirect. I think huge cost cutting is going to happen, because you will see clearly automation will come because of these uncertainties, and you'll also see that the labor cost in general will go up. And there, we need to have ideas. How do we make the lean management structure? So Lean Industry Association, lean management structure, collaboration between OEMs and component even more than in past. Of course, we have an ecosystem. And unlike in Germany or other part of the world, in India, we are still little bit, I will say, OEMs are very specific to that brand. There's very less collaboration between component OEM all coming together and developing a cluster. It is all driven by one OEM and one cluster. Every OEM coming together, helping us. I think this is what I'm expecting in this uncertainty, some good things to come, rather than, let's not lose the chance of using the crisis and the uncertainty.
Right, right. Parag, you were talking when you started off that, you've got some permits going, but challenges for you from a manufacturing perspective is that you're still a fairly employee-intensive organization. How are you to address that challenge amidst the lockdown and probably the staggered lifting up of that lockdown that will come through?
Right. Thank you. So this is what I was going through my mind listening to the other business leaders, that the most important priority, at least for me and our company, is going to be the health and safety of our people. It was important at the start of this crisis, but I can tell you that when we start coming back to work, the risks and the dangers to the people are going to be even more heightened. And if we don't, at its core, this is a health crisis, which has then mutated and impacted the economy in a big way. So we will need to address the health part of it. So priority number one for us is to ensure that when people come back to work, we are providing them the right working environment so as to keep them healthy and safe. And this is already a challenge. I'd love to hear from the others in a bit as well, because our employees, and we employ 2,000 people approximately each at both of our plants, they are wanting to know how safe they will be when they come back to work, and when they are working on an assembly line, or when they are working in clusters, in groups. So we have got a very detailed coming back to work plan, guidelines. At the same time, we are going to provide health and safety equipment to our people. So this is one major area which has to be the focus for all leaders, at least for the next couple of months. The second point, which a number of the speakers before me touched upon, is that the next few months are very volatile and unpredictable. So our typical decision-making, acting process will not be fit for purpose. So we need to become much more agile in decision-making. And that means that we will need to consider breaking down the structures, the hierarchies, especially in the large companies like ours, because there is not going to be enough time for people to get input throughout the hierarchy and then take a decision and go into execution. To give you a simple example, India is now divided into 700 odd districts with a color code, as we all know, red, green, yellow. For us, we are looking at that level of granularity because we want to see when business will start in each of these districts. And is our supply chain ready to start supplying the tires to those districts? Because we have 47 warehouses across the country. So if it happens that one particular region opens up, but our warehouse is in an adjoining district and it is closed down, then we will miss out on the business opportunity. So how do you handle this situation? And this is just one example. I think similar situations might happen on the supply side as well. So as business leaders and as large companies, we will really need to relook at our organization structures and create some agility for the next few months in the system.
Just like to add a bit what Parag said, Manish here. I was pretty much at the heart of the crisis in China in January because the factory comes directly under my supervision.
Right.
And it was like, I almost told my wife and kids that this is like the biggest professional challenge of my life. I said, this is like crazy. 150 people, you're trying to make sure that, their health and safety is important. And their lockdown was, severe. I mean, severe means really severe. But we are located in Tianjin, and the factory got going about on the 15th or the 16th of February, which is a little earlier than the lockdown, because we supply automotive components to drive shafts and steering and airbags. So it became a safety related item, and we were asked to start the factory for ambulance orders because they wanted ambulances to be made. But the rules kept changing every day, so that was an important one that I wanted to touch upon even today. When Parag mentioned that you have 47 warehouses and all over the place, and you're looking at the supply chain here, even if you have one or two factories, the local jurisdiction and the rules keep changing morning to night.
Yeah.
And you have police permission to go there, and then tomorrow the police permission is not valid. No, you need a separate permission. The collector's permission is not valid anymore. That was only to start the factory. Your employees can't come here. They have to stay here. You've got some, a half construction activity going on. You're given the permission to start. 2 days later, the cop says, no, you can't do this out here. Where's the permission? So there is in this whole thing is uncertainty about the business and this, but it's the uncertainty about the decision-making bodies that are kind of governing the place. The local, the collectorate or whatever you are, the local administration also needs to then align that, okay, what is it that the industry wants and what do we need to do? And that's a big gap today, according to me.
Agreed. It's pretty unique to India, I guess, the challenges that we are facing, misalignment between central guidelines and local implementation. And this is something which needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and the interpretation is so different in each place. It's amazingly crazy.
Sriram, you're actually running. Yeah.
Yeah, Manish, the way I would like to look at this, Manish, is like lockdown 1.0 and lockdown 2.0. When it started with 1.0, nobody knows how to react. That's what most of my colleagues in this call said. So it was really crazy, and the first thing we all started doing is working from home. But working from home is going to help us only to plan and design and develop and things like that. But all of us are here to deliver something to the customer, and that's not happening. And in my case, even though my product has been identified as an essential commodity, because this is a harvest season, if you all walk around the fields are ready for harvest, and if my machine doesn't get into the field, the entire harvest what the farmer has to realize goes down the drain waste. Unfortunately, it started raining also, so it is coupling to that it will go waste even more. So that's the reason the demand for us went up. Good thing, I should say, that's the transition between lockdown 1.0 and 2.0. I could able to go to the Punjab government and explain to them, and they could able to understand this immediately, and they give us a permission with lots of restrictions, but we took it with a lot of challenge, and we started running the factory. But at this point of time, I am running on two big challenges. I didn't see any of them talking about it. The biggest challenge is to make my machine. I have got 5,000 components, right from HELA lighting to nuts and bolts and things like that. Now I started my production, and I'm started running short of my supply chain supplies. Yeah. I can run my factory not beyond third, fourth. I have 150 important suppliers sitting all across India. And like one of the speaker was telling, we need to look at not even by state, but by district, whether my supplier is in that district, in the red zone or orange zone. It's really becoming a big challenge for us to organize for supply chain, which even when I was talking to my supply chain guys, even when it opens up, I don't think so we are going to come back to normalcy, at least for 3 to 6 months is the feedback I'm getting from my supply chain guys. So it's going to be really a big challenge, number one problem. Number two problem, I don't have all big OEs. I have a mix of small, medium, and large scale guys. The small scale guys are really, really running short of cash. I can't tell them that I have a liquidity problem. They are not willing to listen to me. Whether I have my liquidity problem or not, I have to solve his problem. Otherwise, even if he can work, he will lift his hand. So we are talking to our corporate, somehow try to get the cash out of them and then support these guys. I don't even talk about my credit period of 45 days, 30 days, forget everything. We are going for cash discounting and we are giving them cash first for them to pay the salaries. I don't know how government is closing their eyes. We are making representation in all forums. They are forcing us to pay salaries. People like us can afford. Small time guys, for him to run weekly business is going to be very, very difficult. So the small time guys comes to me and asks me, don't even wait for supplies and dues and overdues. Please pay us money. We want them when we open up because we look at them as like our business partner, not our suppliers. So if we don't support them at this point of time, they are not going to support me when the demand comes up. I'm not sure when it is going to be, but whenever, then they will not be able to support us. That fellow would have dead by that time. So I think we should concentrate on especially small and medium guys, support them for the financials, make them to be live at this point of time so that they will continue their business. These are the two major things. I'm really worried how it is going to be when the exit comes into place.
Interesting. Sandeep and DK, I mean, with hopefully the economy opening up, business should hopefully pick up. But some of the challenges that Sriram just mentioned, both from a supply chain, model, the availability of parts, and also the liquidity challenge. I mean, that's true for you and also for the entire dealer community, I would imagine, who are tumbling within that challenge. I mean, is there a view in terms of how are you looking to support your extended ecosystem?
Yeah. So DK, can I just answer what we have done?
Please.
So, that's a very, very important thing in our business. I think in every business, like I mentioned to you, that our stakeholders are like our family members and we cannot live without each other. So I think the first thing we did as an organization to pay wages to our own employees. In fact, we released our salaries on 26th of March. Immediately after lockdown, and we were not worried about our employees. More than that, we were worried about our shop floor employees. Not employees means senior people. We were worried about our shop floor people. The second thing what we did was immediately looked into all the pending dues of our dealers and vendors. And not only what we have, the claim from their side, which we have already received. We actually went back to them, whatever is due till 31st March, please send it to us immediately. Even if you send a mail to us with the proof, scanned proof, we will consider it and we will release that because we knew that this is the most important time for us to show our trust and confidence in them. So that's what we did. We cleared by 31st March, the payments to dealers and vendors were all calculated, and within the first week of April, everything was clear. And then immediately after that, we had a meeting with, like we have a dealer council meeting, we have supplier council meeting. So I've already had a meeting with dealer council. In fact, I've already had a meeting with all the dealers because they were much more vulnerable. And tomorrow, day after, we have a meeting with supplier council. So therefore, what we are doing is, first of all, take care of their immediate problem. What one of our friends talked about is their cash in hand or cash flow issue. The second thing, what we have already discussed with the dealers, that how we are going to go about in the coming months in the first quarter. Immediate challenge is our first quarter. And similarly, our challenge with our supplier. Now, some of our friends talked about what we need to look at is automation, whether it is semi-automation, full automation. This is something which we need to look at, which we were not looking at it a very high, important area, priority area, but we need to look at what all we can do, whether it is in our plant or at the vendor end. though we have many areas where we have automated. So how do we use AI and IoT? That is also very important. The third is much higher, bigger engagement with the suppliers and dealers to understand their pain areas and come out with the countermeasures. So now those things are specific to the company. There are some common areas like in case of dealer, their financial liquidity, how do they take care of their manpower, what kind of investment they should be now making on the infrastructure. All those things we have to relook. In case of vendors, like I talked about, their location, their investment, their supply chain, whether they should supply only to us or they can have multiple supply from one location to other OEMs. Where should they have their plant? Earlier, we used to give a lot of importance to their proximity to a factory and immediate availability of parts from their end, which is not going to end. So how do we take care of their challenges? We are in the middle of these discussions, and what we are doing is we are looking at our parent company. We have already had meetings with like Hitachi Construction Machinery and looked into their advice and suggestions, what they have done in other parts of the world, because in some of the areas like Europe, Europe and China, this problem had started much earlier. So what have they done, and what they feel is the right solution for us? So we are working on all that, making a concrete plan so that we can at least take care of immediate problem. From, I would say, from what we are looking at immediately are first 2 quarters. Right? How do we survive in first quarter? That is our immediate problem. The second thing is that how do we plan our business, reorganize our business in terms of our organization structure, our communication with the dealers and vendors, what kind of financial commitment we need to revisit, which we had already talked about. So those are the areas which we are looking at.
Interesting. We've got Srihari.
I will not repeat what Sandeep has said. Most of what he mentioned about supporting distribution cash flow and supplier cash flow is something which we've been doing as well. Whether it's early payments or whether it's restructuring some of their dues in these months when there is no business, like month of April, and we don't know how it will be in May. One of the other things that has been going on is to engage the workforce of the distribution. They're sitting at home, sales and service people, generally most of them are out in the field. So what our organization has been doing is to actually run programs for them, mainly for competence development, both for salespeople and after sales people. So this has been so we have had quite a lot of rounds of training, and I can say that the response to it is very high. Very interesting. People come on time and they are very interactive, and so you can sense a certain higher level of engagement than what you normally would do for learning activities. So
higher sense of responsibility.
So of course people know that these are tough times and they need to survive. Good thing I would also say when it comes to our distribution is also that many of them have shown patience, and they have not tried to get rid of employees or things like that. They've tried to manage it. They're kind to take a view where preserve the organization for what's coming in the next 2 to 3 months. As Sandeep mentioned, how do we manage the coming 2 quarters is very critical, because now we are getting into May, and then we'll have the rainy season. So construction comes down to almost a halt. This is a seasonal downturn which we all have every year.
Right.
So we do have quite the double whammy of both the crisis and this coming together. So we will see how to manage this now.
Interesting.
I will add to one more challenge to Sriram, what he said regarding, of course, vendors and small suppliers and the blue collars. I think these are the biggest challenge, and I don't know why government is not supporting it, yet not understood. This will be something which will ever be remembered in history, that why India put this draconian way of handling payment to everybody. Something will come up, or else this is really a moment to forget why government did not do this. But on top of it, I think we have a consumer business in Hella which is more going towards small roadside garages and these retailers. And I think what we are facing biggest challenge is, even with the liquidity whatever government can support through SIDBI and for SMEs, these are not capable to get the fund. And now, India being such a high on interest rate, cost of capital is so high, and these people does not have the financial literacy to get the money. It is stand still. They are freezed. We are able to train their guys and all those things we are doing. But when it comes to the finance part of it, the liquidity part of it, it's a desire. I think it will be interesting to also hear from Parag how their dealership is responding to it. But we clearly see that in the auto aftermarket, we see a standstill, and we are trying to boost their morale. I have on video conference take hundreds of them every third, fourth day. But again, they come back to the ground reality, and they are not able to ask the banks to give them working capital or organize from somewhere else. They have never done in past, and their turnaround time to go beyond and do it. So this is a big question mark now, other than the vendors and the blue collar. I see that small dealers and roadside mechanics, government has given for roadside mechanic or an individual person a freedom to start working wherever there is not a red zone. But nobody has started. It's like an inertia. It's like, and I think talking about business is like a crime sometimes. They feel like it's fine. Even Modi said Jaan and Jahan both together, It's not that Jaan hai and Jahan be, both has to come. The livelihood and the life, both has to run at this point of time. So health is supreme. If without health, even the business will not come. But I think somewhere the livelihoods have to be protected for the small guys.
Yeah. So if I can add my 2 bits to that, we see the challenge with the dealers as well. And you're right, there at the moment there is a lot of fear in the market. So even if it opens up, it will take some time for the things to start moving. And I think we should focus on the demand side of it. How can we make sure that there are no bottlenecks in fulfilling the demand? And therefore, supporting the dealer or the last retailer is going to become a top priority for all of us. What we are trying to do is tie up with NBFCs and maybe banks, not giving them recourse to our funds, but to tie up with them and to introduce to them, especially our reliable dealers. We have a list of 5,000 dealers who we work with, but there are a set who we consider long-term reliable. And there we are able to provide banks and the dealers the connection so that they can get their working capital rolling. And the second big thing is, of course, in this, which we should talk about, is this will be a huge opportunity to relook at business models and to leverage digital. So I think there is going to be a big shift in consumer behavior, and they're going to move to online shopping in a huge way. And tires is a typical category which resisted this online shopping because it's very, very difficult to fit a tire at home. But such a big crisis, I think, is going to force people to relook at that. And we see that people will start to demand doorstep delivery. People will start to say, why do I need to go to a shop to get these services done? Why can't someone come and do it in the safety of my home? So when things start to normalize, our team is going to focus a lot on creating these new business models and new service concepts. If that can help you also take some ideas from that. And would be happy to hear from some of the other industries also, how they're planning to capture on the opportunities that any crisis likely throws up.
That's a very interesting topic Parag has just raised regarding the new business model. And I think again here we are fragmented, Parag. We are part of ACMA. You are part of the Tire Association. At ACMA, I'm chairing the aftermarket for the country, and we have just started this digital model. Bringing companies together. We are just forming a catalog like Tech Dog catalog, which is in Europe very famous. So we have just signed an agreement with them. The catalog is ready with some 10 companies now. The idea is how can we enable this digital environment to come in? How can investment be limited? Because the problem is each company on its own to make this change is difficult in terms of investment. Anyway, the market is uncertain. And that is where I think we need to come together and minimize our investment, and whatever the directories of retailers, dealers, and putting them on a catalog, talking to Amazon in a way which is more friendly to our, or I'll say protecting our risks so that these people are safeguarded. Will be great actually to interact on that.
I'd like to bring Srihari into the discussion. I'm kind of keen to also hear his perspective on what he sees as the changing trends in both consumer behaviors and probably as both an engineering and strategy consulting firm, what is his view in terms of what are the likely rebound scenarios that may emanate, post this scenario?
Thanks, Manish, and good talking to everyone. I hope all your families and everyone is safe. I think, needless to say, we are going through an unprecedented time in our history. I think India, particularly, and especially the auto sector, it essentially was a double whammy because we entered sort of 2010 with a really bad 2019. The entire auto sector, I mean, was down by about 15 odd percent, and people were already struggling. Businesses were already hurting in the auto sector. And then come 2020, and we got really crushed. If you look at the first 3 months in 2020, pretty much the market and the demand is down. If you look at the passenger car, the two-wheeler market, we're almost down by 25-30%, and the commercial vehicle is hit even more. We're down more, like 50%. I think where we go from here is going to be quite interesting. First and foremost, I think we just transitioned to a new emission regime in the auto sector. And if you look at most of the auto players, they have made significant investment in the hope that we will see a lot of pre-buy effect, and now that's all gone for a toss. I think first and foremost, there would be a need for some sort of a government intervention in terms of trying to get rid of some of the older vehicles. And I think now is, if any time, now is the time to come up with a proper scrappage policy that would not only allow us to get rid of some of our old vehicles, but also sort of stimulate demand in the market. And also it gives rise to a newer ecosystem in terms of how do we sort of get rid of our old cars or trucks, and that would also sort of bring in a new downstream business into play. In terms of recovery itself, I think we're probably looking at somewhere sort of starting in Q4, where we see probably some green shoots of recovery, because I think currently, unless and until there is some good news on the side of vaccine or treatment, I think people will still be very, very hesitant in terms of how the market is going to play out. Particularly on the consumer side, I think the consumers are going to be extremely hesitant in terms of spending any sort of disposable income on anything needless. I think as much as we would like to think, job losses are going to be real. I think they're already happening in a lot of our sectors, and it is only going to get worse as we go through this. But as we come out of this, I think there is a larger opportunity for India that is actually staring in our face, and where we have kind of for a long time we have tried to avoid it. Genuinely, I think the world is starting to look around and look at alternatives to China. Not more so, I mean, this is just one factor in terms of the virus, but also the fact that people are genuinely starting to look at alternate supply chains and a market that can offer them that supply chain. And India, I think, is primed from that aspect. But the key is, I think a lot of the Indian suppliers historically have grown through joint ventures, particularly the large ones. They need to start sort of, quote unquote, sort of unshackling themselves and start investing a lot more into R&D. And this is where I think the government needs to sort of help them in terms of whatever, giving tax rebates and R&D, because today if you look at most of our R&D is application engineering oriented. We are not doing much of fundamental R&D when it comes to the auto sector, and that could be a significant game changer for India and the Indian automotive supply chain. The critical element also is, as somebody spoke, is the health and hygiene factors for most of our employees that are coming back to work. And not only that, I think the bigger challenge will be the mental health crisis that we will probably start seeing. See, as much as we all love to work from home, currently all this is done because we are forced into this situation. And let's not forget that the work from home really works for only a small population of the people, and that population is people who are kind of engaged in more of cognitive kind of environment where we're doing sort of R&D, we're doing marketing, whatever, right? The guy who is on the shop floor, which constitutes a large part of our workplace, they still have to go back to work, and we need to figure out a way to provide them a safe environment. And people who are going to be working from home, see, a man is a social animal, a man, woman is a social animal, and as much as we spend a lot of time in work doing whatever we're supposed to do, there's a lot of stuff that happens around the water cooler, and those are the things that currently people miss. And how do you recreate that in the virtual world is also going to be one significant challenge for most organizations moving forward. And I only think that we should look at this as a huge opportunity for India, because coming out of this, maybe we'll be well placed. I think there are multiple schools of thoughts. Some say the government has done the right things, some say government has not done the right things. But at the end of the day, I think this crisis, I don't think government alone can manage. I think it is up to every individual to kind of try and manage this crisis, and every business to try and manage this crisis. And coming out of it, I think we have a lot of opportunities for us within the automotive sector, particularly in terms of positioning ourselves as a global automotive hub servicing the larger communities of the world. And that is something that we need to look at very carefully.
Thanks, Shriyari. Sriram, I'm conscious that you might have to leave. I just want to get your thoughts on what Shriyari mentioned about this whole aspect of the situation throwing up an opportunity for our Indian automotive market. And I'd also like to get your opinion on this, Ashwini, thereafter, because you have a larger remit from an EPAC perspective to see, is there a real drift that is likely to begin of, people moving away from China and looking at India as the next alternative?
Manish, we all are part of a global team player. Class is having their facility in India and China. So personally, I don't have any difference on it. But certainly the demand generation that is going to create after the COVID is going to be real challenge, I feel so. Right. I don't think so the recovery is going to be V. If it is good enough, then I expect it to be at least U-shaped. I don't think so. We have already predicted that it is going to go down the demand at least by 15-20% on our annual demand. And even today morning, I was listening to one of the seminars there. They said even IMF cannot able to predict how it is going to go forward. They are looking at month to month or quarter to quarter, so they cannot go beyond 1 or 2 quarters because the scenarios and the volatility is so heavy that we cannot look at it. So really for me, the demand creation for next 1 or 2 quarters is going to be really critical. So I can only sympathize my sales colleagues, and I can only cooperate and coordinate with them by putting some stocks here and there to take care of the sudden demand, if at all, if it comes. Otherwise, I don't expect any sudden spurt in the next 2 quarters, Manish.
Okay, interesting.
Manish, if you go back to the 1995s, all of us are here from the automotive field. There was a huge demand for low-cost country manufacturing, and China and India were the big hubs. And everybody, the global purchasing units, and all these people made a beeline, and they set up these things in India and China and all. I mean, after some time, I thought we lost the race. It was a sprint at that time. We lost the sprint. China won the sprint to grab much of the business, and the automotive industry just kind of veered itself to China for high-end and low-end manufacturing. Yes, of course, India also got benefited at a time, but I would say that the large chunk went there. China is a huge market, man. It's got a, I mean, look at the passenger vehicle industry. It's 24 million cars today. It's a huge number, and we are stuck at 4 million over here in India. And I'm a passenger vehicle supplier, so that's why I'm quoting a passenger vehicle number here. It's going to be very difficult, to try and think that a lot of people are just going to move to other places and exit China now. This is a disruption. Had it only been China and that COVID had remained in China, then we would have thought, there's a problem, it can come again. But now it's a world problem. So, I don't think that it will be a situation where we'll really be able to capitalize on this exit or opportunities that come our way. I think a lot of it is anecdotal, a lot of it is sentimental, a lot of it is emotional. that it's coming out that way, that we would like to. And of course, the rhetoric comes from the US that we want to punish China, and Japan has already taken some steps. But even then, the amount of like Shira mentioned, I mean, Class and Volvo, everybody's in China. Hitachi might be in China. I mean, we are a small company compared to this, what they are, and they're all in China, and China is their biggest market. So usko chhodna mushkil hai. I doubt anything will it will not be a flood of floodgates are not going to open here. There might be a few opportunities, but to the best of my knowledge, that place has huge potential even now.
Any contrasting views to that?
Yeah, so yeah, I will say it's fine, but I still feel that we have a gate opener. This situation currently is gate opener, not for the consumption in China. I think a lot of European companies have very good markets, including, for example, all the European car manufacturers have a very strong footprint in China. But if you look at some of the requirements, especially in the construction industry, agro industry in Asia as well as in US, I clearly see that they will de-risk China, and not because of any other region, not because of the virus, but just because what they have experienced now in their management, it gives them food for thought, at least to float the inquiries. Now, only till that much it will support us. And after the inquiry, what we do with our competitiveness, with our flexibility, I'll tell you one industry, which is auto aftermarket industry. There's a huge requirement in US, and big, large distributors want to buy from China or any other location. Today, they all buy from China because the response time is very fast. Because whatever they wish for, they are fulfilling. They do the very fast tooling, soft tooling. They will make small numbers, huge varieties for them. India, we are highly dependent on OEMs, and which means that we are on a low variety and high on quantity. The business models are different. And because of that, the aftermarket volume never India could pick up. But now there's an opportunity. If we really change our business models, take some risk, and also become competitive, it should be possible.
Yeah. No, I think I want to add here one more point to what you are saying. I think there are two things we need to look into China. One is the local market. One is the China manufacturers for the world. Right. I think all along, if you see last 20 years, most of these people who want to buy from China, say US or Europe, they never trusted China, they never liked China, but still they went and bought, and because of the cost reason, they not really looked into the long-term perspective. They entangled and gave a lot of business to them, China. Right, but I think today most of the people, I talk to the people who really make the decision makers to go into China. The trust factor is coming down significantly with China. The China is trying to dominate the world. All the conflicts, what they're generating, etc. The trust factor is coming down, and this could be a trigger point for people to get out of the manufacturing for the world kind of a situation. For the local requirement, obviously all the people will be present in the local market for the local market. But for the world, I think this could be a trigger point. But will it happen overnight? May not be. But if the people start thinking about it and it will start happening, it might take 5 to 10 years time to really get out. But I think this is really triggered a thought process that is it the right thing to go to a country where we don't trust them and put all our eggs into that country. I think that's the thought process everybody are now thinking about.
Yeah, and the other point, and I buy the argument that you can never replace China considering the significant economies of scale that they bring to the table, right? And I also agree that supply chains are not created overnight, but I think there has to be some sort of an earnest effort that has to be made by the industry to kind of set some sort of a manufacturing base in India. I mean, today, automotive in India contributes to, I don't know, I think the numbers are probably about 35 or 40% of our manufacturing for India. Now, one of the things that this crisis has actually exacerbated in the Indian scenario is you look at the number of migrant population in India, and if you see, this is only going to get worse as the economy starts coming to a complete halt. Right? And this has to be looked at as from a long-term perspective to see how can you figure out a way to get these people sort of at least decent wage jobs in some of their local sort of tier 2, tier 1 cities. right? And this is the opportunity for the manufacturing that comes. And I agree. I mean, you cannot just replace a China overnight, but a thought process has to be started. And unless the industry leaders take sort of the bull by the horns, we are never going to get. Otherwise, we'll only be relegated to a supplier who is getting 99.989% of his business from a Hero MotoCorp, and he'll be running that for the rest of his life. I think that is a paradigm shift that we need to start thinking. Otherwise, we will still be stuck in services, and we will never be moving into a manufacturing segment, and will never be able to develop the job creation. And let's forget about whatever the $5 trillion economy by 2024, if we are not thinking in those directions.
Interesting. I'm conscious we are close to about 60 minutes. I had budgeted for about 15 minutes if all you gentlemen have the time to spare. But I just want to kind of bring a certain focus on one of the other parts of the discussion today, which is about what are the trends that will very strongly emerge. And an oft-spoken and debated discussion is about the whole automation aspect. The investment into technology, investment into automation, and Sandeep mentioned, touched upon that subject. I'm kind of keen to get some more inputs from you, Sandeep, on that. I mean, do you see that as a growing trend amongst automotive players, both tier 1 and OEMs?
Yeah, I think that's very important. I remember when I was in automobile industry, our engagement with supplier used to be from day one. That was a major shift I saw at that time in the thought process of OEM, that when I'm developing a new product, there was a time when they used to bring in their supplier much later after conceiving the product. But then they changed that. We'll have a very clear understanding with the supplier, and they have to become part of our product development from day one. The advantage of that is that your supplier starts innovating and thinking and designing the product as per the requirement of the manufacturer. And in this process, he develops his own skill level or developing, capability. And they start building more trust in the OEM and start investing. So that is how I have seen a lot of suppliers upgrading themselves and scaling up in their operations. So I think that is something which we need to go deep into it and understand. The relationship between the OEM and supplier have to undergo big change. It has already undergone change in many parts of the world, and I have seen in automobile industry, but even in other industry like ours in construction equipment, which was growing quite rapidly a year and a half back, we need to change the way we have been working. That is one. So that means involving your supplier, who are very important part of our business from day one. That is one. Number two, how do we bring in automation, semi-automation, looking at the availability of manpower and skill level, because we have a larger responsibility towards the people in India, that we generate employment, give them employment. So therefore, we should not be at a stage where we are automating a plant because we have a financial capability, but we do not generate employment. So that is another thing which I would like to highlight. So make to print, I think, kind of relationship have to go away from our supplier. That is something which I would like to leave a thought today in this, because many times we go to the supplier, this is my drawing, this is what I want you to do for me, and do it. So we still have to do that for some component. But then, like today, if I look at my friend Themea and Meritor, they develop products. They, in fact, other day when I was talking to them, they were saying that we have already developed certain products in-house which can meet your requirement, can fit in very well into your product. So that is something which I think our vendors we have to do, and we have to closely work with them. That is my one suggestion or one thought which I thought I must share.
Parag, any views from your perspective on the emergence of automation, the fact that there are likely to be flexible operating models and production models that may also engage?
Yeah. So over the long term, I think this will definitely put more emphasis on automation, because as we saw here, one of the biggest challenges that we are going to face is going to be keeping the labor safe making sure they are able to reach their workplace again. And even more as we go forward, when the demand is very volatile, going up and down significantly without any predictions, at that time, how do you maintain all this huge labor cost? So over the long term, I think there is definitely going to be pressure. But automation can happen in the manufacturing space, and I say that automation will also happen in the front end of the business, which is in the interaction with the customer and consumer.
Right.
So therefore, consumer-facing businesses like ours are already facing the pressure from e-commerce that will further accelerate with this situation, especially because now no one wants to be in contact with anyone else. They want to be able to do everything offline or online rather, but not in physical contact with people. So how can industries also look at the front end of their business and use technology, digital technology, web technology, to try and minimize the costs as well as the contact? But I agree with what Sandeep said, that we are also we have a responsible towards society, and one way of that is by creating jobs. But rather than create inefficient, expensive industries, I would rather that we grow the whole pie, that we grow the business so much that it needs that many more people. So our endeavor will be to try and focus on growing the business of the company as well as automating. So net, we do not reduce the number of employees we hire, but we keep increasing that with the total size of the business.
Interesting. NP, Ashwini, Ramashankar, any views?
I think I will go a little bit even forward. The current situation will encourage us to fast forward our digital approach. And I clearly see that whatever we talk about Industry 4.0 and the core of it being flexibility, whether flexibility in our soft floor, in our assembly lines, which can make many OEMs at the same line, flexibility also in terms of product development so that you have the mass customization. And I think customers will understand this now as a value. Maybe in past, everything like my boundary, my brand, and everything you make it like me. Compared to that, the collaboration will start, which I talked to you in the beginning as a business model, and they will give this benefit of doubt to suppliers also, so that they come up with ideas. For example, if Hella has some ideas for next 5 years or 6 years, I think we're in a better situation to go deep in that vertical and make something for many, many OEMs together. So that flexibility needs a huge digitization. One more radical change I foresee, I don't know how true it will be, but looking at the crisis of jobs, blue collar, which will happen. Few blue collars, highly skilled, their salaries will go up, their productivity will improve. That's why they will survive. Rest of it will be forced, for a different kind of, employee shape. Maybe they will become a micro entrepreneurs at their place. Migration might stop. And in that case, for example, repairing a car does not need a spare parts to travel all the way from many places. They might do the printing of those parts locally. So it may start in your household item, but somewhere I think the 3D printing will start at a location where these people will use their hand knowledge to print something, to make there what is needed rather than everything is getting transported. So the additive manufacturing may take birth in this scenario radically after some time, where guys who are like OEMs and the good suppliers who have designed IP, they will give a open source like a digital subscription, and this subscription will go to them. And if let's say I have a light for XYZ model, I will just give a software to them, and there's a possibility. In some way we are doing that today. For example, diagnostics. We make repair instruction in our Hella Goodman brand, and it goes to the mechanic there. I think these things which is right in the community, because you will avoid traveling. You will avoid, a lot of people working at one place. So the community has to self-sustain, small group of community. Today it is very difficult the way we are integrated. What is red zone? If the red zone is one supplier, a green zone OEM is not able to produce. I think this, I see a change which will be little radical in thinking, but I have certain doubt that this might accelerate.
Okay.
No, maybe just to add, I think, thank you, Sandeep. I think you rightly recognize that as, it is one thing is it is extremely difficult for a multinational companies. We as in India, we need to develop capability to do an end-to-end product development and also execute and develop products not only for India, but also capable of going and marketing and selling it outside of India. I think End of the day, over next 5-10 years, I think we should develop and execute the capability and also develop products for the market, Indian market and the global market. If we don't do that, we will keep on, talking about we don't spend enough in terms of R&D, D&D, etc. I think that's one thought. We are doing it as a company, but I think most of the multinational companies it's extremely difficult. But we need to, as a leaders, we need to push our organization sitting outside of India to allow us to design, develop, and execute products for the local market to start with, and then extend that into the global market.
Yeah.
Ashwini, any opinions from your end?
Manish, we at Autocar embarked upon this agility journey, maybe 6 to 8 or 9 months back. And I think somebody from the forum over here also spoke about agility in the organization and, redeveloping the business models. And we are strongly looking at idea to market, market to order, order to cash. So we've kind of broken up the whole process into, into these 3 sub processes. And then each sub process is trying to be looked at. Okay, in idea to market, how do we need to get out there quickly? What do we need to do? Market to order, the entire sales processes, the logistics and stuff like that needs to be relooked at. And then all this is, an order to cash, of course. And at the end of the day, how are we executing the order, and how does it kind of reach the logistics and everything involved with the customer's end. But more importantly, the digitalization again, which Mr. Satpathy touched upon. That I think all this has to be driven by a lot of digitalization. Yeah, the company is seriously thinking about it now. I think it's going to press the accelerator for these things much more than ever before. I think from a strategic point of view, this is the need of the hour, and people will have to rethink exactly what we're going to be doing. And in these uncertain times, there is no correct answer, but yeah, I think we got to keep thinking in that direction.
Well, that was wonderful, and thank you everyone for contributing to this. I mean, I think everyone kind of is probably on the same page that the uncertainty is likely to continue, and it is important that all businesses kind of prepare for different scenarios and outcomes, and how it kind of evolves over the course of the next 2 quarters. I think Parag mentioned it, and also kind of everyone agreed that the businesses need to be agile. There is a need to create, focus on creating new business models, having a stronger supply chain strategy, we should actually be fairly granular, even in approach as well. Health, safety, well-being of employees is going to be important as people start to resume back operations. There is the need for larger industry-wide collaboration. There is the need to protect and look after the wider stakeholder community, be it your people on the shop floor, the temporary labor, the dealers, distributors, and then therefore, it's about focusing on industry-wide growth rather than, at this stage looking very insular and inward, so to say. I mean, clearly from a future perspective, I think everyone is, again, agreeing to the fact that digitalization and automation is going to be increasingly going to be a larger focus area for businesses, not just on the manufacturing front, but probably also extending onto the front end in terms of saying, how do you address the change in consumer behavior and consumer buying patterns? How do you address that? And while at the same time have flexible operating models that allow you to sustain operations in the event that similar situations crop up in the future as well. I think the word is kind of split as far as work from home is concerned. I think there are people who believe work from home is a reality that might continue, but it might necessarily be with more cognitive layer of the workforce rather than people who actually end up being on the shop floor. And I kind of agree. I mean, it's only going to be the nature of work that will eventually demarcate. But one thing is true, that there are going to be new operating models that will emerge, which will center around work from home. I know TCS is an extremely different example, but when they talk about by 20, 25, 75% of the workforce being operating from work from home and yet being higher in terms of productivity, that's saying something, right, at the end of the day. So I think overall, I mean, it's been an extremely valuable session, gentlemen, and thank you so much, each one of you, for contributing and giving your perspectives and insights. I hope this has been equally an endearing and engaging session for all of you, and I look forward to many more sessions that we may be able to host in the future. But for the time being, I think, like someone said, right now it's about survival, coping with this lockdown scenario, and hoping that we emerge stronger than ever before as an industry, as a nation, as an economy. So here's hoping to that, and fingers crossed. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I look forward to being in touch.
Thank you. Thanks,
Nice
Manish.
talking
Thanks,
to all of
Sandeep
you.
ji.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you very
Parag.
much.
Thanks,
Thanks to everyone.
MP.
Thank you
Really,
very
thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sandeep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.